Bonjour, good day, how's it going? Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu. This is the Bonsai Stuff podcast, and it's a safe place for bonsai lovers. When the rest of the world feels like it's gone slightly mad, it's really comforting to know that we've got our little trees in pots to keep us grounded and give us something to focus on, which is lovely, and they love the attention that we give them. This episode of the podcast, I want to talk about some golden rules. And anyone that knows me knows that I do not like the word rules when it comes to bonsai. There's some fundamentals, some horticultural stuff that we need to all keep in mind, but there's no real golden rules. So I want to focus on golden rules that I've come up with or talked about or thought about for those people that are looking to acquire a tree. It's things that I think are absolutely essential that you go through and nut out prior to acquiring the tree, to making it part of your collection. Something that's really important because, bonsai is not about today, it's not about tomorrow, it's about forever. It's about such a long time. And, when you take on the responsibility of a bonsai, that's exactly what it is. And it's something that you need to be prepared for. So I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to talk about always finding the potential too in material that you look at. So those two should go hand in hand for this episode of the podcast. All right, so let's get into it. I think about getting bonsai when a lot of people start, or when your collection gets to a point that you're realising that you've gone a bit nutty and you've got so many trees in the collection it's not funny, and you say to yourself, all right, one's got to go before I can put this one back in the collection. I just want you to consider some things. And if you've done bonsai for a long time, then this will seem pretty basic and elementary, but one of the major things, one of the golden rules that I think you need to check off in your mind, or have it all set down first, is where are you going to keep the bonsai? I see a lot of people, I talk to a lot of people, and it's at the point where there's an issue with the tree, something's wrong with them, they're a bit crook, there's something not right, bugs may have come in, and the thing just seems to be getting weaker and weaker and weaker, and it's all right. So where do you keep the tree? Well, I really don't have any room for it. I've only got a back deck. All right. Well, okay. One of the golden rules is how much sunlight can you offer to your bonsai? It's like getting a dog. Let's say you acquire a highly active puppy or a dog, and you don't have the ability to be home at all, and you can't walk the animal. You can't spend time with it. The dogs in those situations become very destructive. So you need to make sure that you've got, you're getting something which is suiting your lifestyle when it comes to a pet, to a member of the family. And it's exactly the same when it comes to bonsai. I think looking at how to fix a problem down the track is crazy. It's hard. Where you may not be able to fix it. You may look at it and sort of go, well, where I've got the tree sitting, it gets, maybe morning sun for an hour or two, and then that's it. For the rest of the day, there's nothing. It's like, okay, well, that particular tree, that variety that you've got there, that needs sort of 6-8 hours of sunlight per day to thrive. Does it get any exposure to the elements, to the rain, to the wind, anything like that? Oh, no, it's a very sheltered little spot. Well, it's okay. Well, that's the sort of thing that should have been discussed or considered prior to getting the tree, because you can't change the environment without selling or moving property. You can't really get a better environment. That said, I must admit, hand on heart, we did move and acquire a property that has a beautiful north-facing backyard, which for anyone in the Northern Hemisphere, north-facing is just beautiful, gets lots of sunlight, and we bought a block just so my trees would be very happy. Anyway, mad. But yeah, so you've got to think about the positioning of your trees and how much sunlight that you can offer them, because that's on you. You want not to have it kept where it looks the best for you. But this is where you've got to switch that focus to be on the tree. So golden rule number one is how much sunlight will the tree need? And can you offer that to the bonsai, to the tree that you're about to acquire? The second one is going to be, what are the watering needs of this tree? And they do differ, they do vary, but if you've got a really demanding job and you're away from home a lot, you travel a hell of a lot, how are you going to manage watering this tree at any time of the year? Don't always think worst case scenario in summer and it's going to be stinking hot, what's going to happen? Also during winter, the tree may need watering every 3, 4, 5, 6 days, something like that. Are you going to be able to do that? And if you're not, what are you going to put in place to make sure that the tree's not going to die? There's no point acquiring a bonsai or adding a bonsai to your family and then trying to work this stuff out. I've got this tree. All right, who can look after it for me? Who can water it for me? Can you do it? Because there's so many stories that you come across where people have left trees with well-meaning family members, me included, and you come back and they're dead. So there's no point taking that step unless you've got the real fundamentals sorted out first. So, first one, where's it going to live and is it going to be the right spot for it? Second is watering. How are you going to get water into this tree? And, just leaving it sitting in a bucket of water, that's not fair. That's not the right thing to do. And also, you might get away with things temporarily, but it's not a long-term successful strategy for keeping bonsai successfully. So you need to make sure that you've got the watering needs down pat. If you can't be there, you and it's your responsibility, it's your tree. If you can't be there, then how are you going to make sure that it happens and it happens correctly? People that have bonsai know how to water bonsai pretty much a lot better than someone who doesn't have bonsai. And finding that out is a hard life lesson, that you give something that you love to someone else for a very short period of time, a few weeks while you're away, coming back to find that tree either set back a very long way or dead it's a hard lesson to work out that watering trees is very different to watering a veggie garden. So that's golden rule number 2 that I've got. The second is, it's like I talked earlier about when you get a dog, to work out the amount of time that you can spend with that animal to make sure that they're going to fit into your life, but also be happy and develop and get what they need out of the arrangement, the family arrangement that you're creating. It's the same with a bonsai. It's like, okay, how many times a year will that tree that you've got, how many times a year will it need work? And by work, it could be pruning, it can be spraying, it can be whatever it is that needs to get done for that tree. How many times a year will you physically need to do something on that tree? And are you equipped and able to do it? Is it something that's in your range of available skills set? So you know how to look after this tree. There's no point just getting something and going, all right, so what do I do with it? Sure, there's people like me around the world that can help and offer advice, but do your research first. Like, work out what it is. You might, if you flip it around, you might want a tree that you're going to be working on, every week. You want to be really busy with that little bonsai that you've got in front of you, but the tree might only need work once or twice a year. So therefore, you're going to kill it with overworking the tree. Is it better to leave that bonsai alone and target another species which requires a hell of a lot more work that will keep you more satisfied? Because you might find that instead of having zero time to look after your tree because you're away, you might have so much time up your sleeve that it's not funny, that you want something that's really going to be demanding and growing like crazy and can handle being worked excessively. So they're all things that you need to work out. But it's the skill set side of it that I think is super important. You've got to prepare for it. You've got to have the tools. Bonsai. We've got a 1,000,001 different tools that we can use to do 1,000,001 different jobs, and they're all brilliant. They're all fantastic, and they're all got a really specific purpose. But sometimes, heading down the hardware store and grabbing, the first thing that looks like it's there for pruning fruit trees or roses is not what's going to be suitable for our bonsai. It's that surgical requirement of super clean cuts that are precise, that allow the tree to heal as quickly as possible. It's not like going out and pruning your fruit trees once a year and breaking branches or doing massive cuts on it and saying, "Oh, you'll be right. You're strong as an ox. You'll get past this." You shouldn't be doing that anyway. It should be, every time you work with a tree in any capacity, it should be to the best of your ability and doing things so the tree can keep taking steps forward. But with bonsai, it's really, really important that you invest in everything that goes with bonsai. Get the right tools for the right job, and grow your kit over time, and make sure that you've got exactly what you need when it's time to do that work. But working out how much time you can allocate to do the work on the tree, what the work is that's needed, and will you have the tools that are needed to do the work, and are you equipped? Do you know what you're going to do with it? If not, spend some time, learn, educate, find out what to do, get the bonsai network going and talk to people. Hey, I'm looking at an XYZ tree. What do you think's involved with that? Like, how many times a year would you essentially be pruning that? All right, it's 400 times a year you're going to prune it. Well, I don't have 400 days of the year that I can spare. All right, well, this tree here, it's only once a year. Well, I want something that's more than once a year. I want something that's really going to keep me probably 15 times a year. All right, cool. If you want to work 15 times a year on a tree, then this sort of species would be a good one for you to start to target, to look at, to consider, to add to your collection, to make sure that it's going to be exactly what you want. Anyway, let's have a short break. I'm going to sip on some coffee, and we'll come back and look at the golden rules for acquisition of bonsai. As I sit here with tingling fingers in both hands from excessive root raking and repotting work lately, we're sort of at the end of the first month of the repotting season for me anyway. I've done a bucket load of trees, and by bucket load I mean lots and lots and lots of all different sizes, including recently some of my larger deciduous trees that look like they were ready to snap the pots that they were in. They're big, heavy trees, and the root work, some trees I can get, and it's a 10-minute repot, maybe a bit longer than 10 minutes getting everything ready. But other trees, I had one very recently, a massive liquid amber that I have, and it was nearly 3.5-4 hours to repot one single tree, and it was exhausting. But as I was doing that, I was thinking about this specific thing that I want to talk about now, with these golden rules for bonsai acquisition. It's to talk about repotting. It's something that is brushed over a lot of the time when you get that rush of blood to acquire trees. But the bigger your collection, the more time that needs to be spent every year on repotting. And it might be that it's actually something that's too much for the time that you've got allocated. You talk about doing work on a tree, pruning, whatever else. It's a whole other ball game when it comes to repotting. You miss the window for repotting, and for me, it's not game over, but it's serious. I've had it where you let trees go past the repotting window and you think, oh, damn, I've missed that one. It was tucked away, or I didn't even think about it. Now, I hadn't done my research beforehand to see that the tree was struggling a little bit already, but then you've got a whole nother year before I will go and repot that tree, because I always work within a specific repotting window for my trees, which is always based around when the tree is coming out of its dormant period prior to its strongest growth period. And there are different growth periods of the year, but the strongest growth period, prior to that strongest growth period, is when I will target the tree and I will repot it. So looking at acquiring a tree, golden rule, ask about repotting. What's the timing of it? What's the frequency? What sort of soil will it need? Are you able to get that stuff? Are you able to, you got to make sure, I talk about it with pot mesh and time-wise and pots. What size pot will it need? Will you be able to get that? You might be in a remote area where this sort of stuff is not easy to get. It could just be a seasonal thing that sometimes you hunt for a particular part of the mix, like scoria, for instance, sometimes that can be a real dog to try and find. It can be very hard to acquire, especially at the right size. So, I've heard stories about people getting larger size scoria and sitting in their garages or their sheds with a hammer, belting scoria into smaller sizes on the floor to make sure that they've got it at the size that they want for their soil mix. So these are all things that need to be considered ahead of time. And if you can't repot, what are you going to do? Like, I talked about having the skills to prune. Have you got the skills to repot? And if you don't, well, what's your strategy? What are you going to do? Don't leave it to the point where that tree's been sitting in the pot for 10 years. Suddenly it's struggling. It's almost dead, and it's on, it's gasping for air, and it's a mongrel to try and water, and everything's difficult with it. And then you start to look at, okay, well, I should have repotted that sort of maybe 8 years ago. It should have been done a very long time ago to keep it at its potential. So think about that sort of stuff early on. Is it something that you want to do? It's messy work doing repotting. Is it, if the tree's, let's say it's 1.5 meters tall and the thing weighs 50 kilos, it's a monster. How are you going to move it? How are you going to repot something like that? If it's a forest in a, the pot size might be 1.2 meters wide. How are you going? What's your strategy for repotting that? You can't just simply say, I'm going to keep it like that forever. It doesn't work that way. These trees need care. They need allocation of your time and your resources. So you've got to have these sort of things checked off in not only in your head, but physically know how these things are going to get done. And repotting is a whole nother ballpark. You look at tools that we get for pruning. There's a million and one different tools we can get for repotting as well. Which one's the right one? What's your process going to be? And I think that getting these sort of things checked off as you're getting the tree, it's just another thing that you sort of tick off and go, yes, I can do that. I can fit that in. Once you get to a certain point with your trees, and I talk about this a hell of a lot, when your bonsai collection is too big, it's too much. Repotting is one of those things that commonly gets overlooked. It gets bypassed, and it's probably the one thing that shouldn't be. You can look at a tree and go, oh, those shoots are quite long. Go out there and snip, 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 done. Yeah, okay, I'm on top of the pruning. But it gets time for repotting, and you've got family commitments or personal commitments, or you're away or whatever, and suddenly that window opens and closes before your very eyes, and you think, oh, there's another year I've got to get to. Oh, it'll be fine. It's a bonsai. It loves it. They're designed to grow in pots. Yeah, well, they are to an extent, but they still get to a point where that volume for potential root growth hits its maximum, and it starts to struggle. It starts to go backwards. So you can't miss these windows. You might get away with it. You might find that, yes, this year I made it through, that's okay, but then spring comes around, the growth isn't quite as good. It gets to summer, the tree starts to get burnt. You find that you've got an infestation of whatever it is that's coming from everywhere because these trees weaken and they're loving having a good chew on it and taking every ounce of strength that the tree's got. And then next winter you're wondering why you've got dieback on the tree. That's how it happens without being dramatic, and that's it. These are things that they're not negotiables. These are things that are golden rules for you to consider prior to getting your tree. So the other is, what's the growth habit on the tree? This is a really interesting one that it's not something that when I first thought about it, I wrote it down. Oh, growth habit of the tree, and I thought, that's not really a golden rule, but it is, because understanding how this tree is going to grow will give you the tools that you need, or the focus that you need when it comes to pruning the tree. It puts out rotating leaf pattern. It puts out a dual leaf pattern that continues along the same line. It puts out a rotating dual leaf pattern. It's a stepping leaf pattern, left and right, whatever it is. So you'll know that when you're pruning this thing, how it's going to grow next, like what the next step is for the tree, and that's really important to know that. But it's not just the way that the tree is going to grow. It's also the timing of the year that it's going to grow. All right, so understanding what it's going to do at different times of the year and how it's going to grow at different times of the year is really important, because that leads me into the one of the most important things for any tree, for anyone that is a bonsai lover that has bonsai. It's feeding your damn trees. It's one of the things that gets looked over so frequently by so many people, and it's not hard. It's super easy. Fertilizing your trees is one of those things that is just an absolute no-brainer. But knowing the timing of it and building that into your allocated work time for spending with your trees is so important. So you get a tree, you look at it. Okay, when's this thing going to grow? All right, it's a tropical species. All right, cool. And in your local environment, when's that going to grow best? All right, so it's going to grow best when it starts getting a lot warmer. So it's all right. So it's dormant for a long period during the cold months. All right, so if it's dormant during those cold months, is it worth fertilizing it in the slightest? No, it's not. It's a waste of time. So therefore, your timing for work and your repotting potential sort of fits into knowing when the tree is going to have its strongest growth period and coming back from that, sort of about a month. And knowing that once it starts to grow, fertilize the thing. All right, perfect. All right, so how often is it going to need fertilizing? What sort of fertilizer will this tree dominate with? Like, what's the best type of fertilizer that I can get that will suit this particular tree, your environment, whatever, and plan for it. Don't be caught by surprise by looking out there and catching up with people at a bonsai club, and someone walks up on stage and says, "Hey, I'm Scott Martin from Bonsai Matsu, and I hope you fed your trees because they've had such a good growth period." And you look around to your mates and go, "Oh, have you guys been fertilising your trees?" Yeah, we've all fertilised them. You haven't? No, I didn't know. I didn't know now was the fertilising time. All right, I'll fertilise them when I get home. It's too late. You've missed the boat. It's one of these things that is not hard to work out, but doing a bit of research and having these boxes ticked is such an easy thing to do, and it's such a valuable tool to have up your sleeve. Maybe a calendar reminder. My thoughts on bonsai calendars for work, but you can definitely have some rough timings of things and go, right, so this is going to grow at whatever time. So really, I should be fertilizing this tree at this time of the year. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to wherever I'm going to buy this fertilizer. I'm going to have it ready to go. So when fertilizing timing starts, I'm off and racing. It's not the sort of thing you go, oh, now I've got to go to wherever and buy this stuff, because it's another job that you've got to do that you've got to fit into your busy schedule. So if you're prepared and you plan and you know this sort of stuff, you can have it all ready to go. So when the timing's right, you say, yep, I've got that right here. I can't tell you how much money I spend at hardware stores acquiring different things throughout the year, because I know when it's prime time for them. Like, let's say it's sphagnum moss that I need for repotting, which is about now, sort of late winter. If I go and try and get that at different times of the year, sphagnum might get used on people with orchids. So, when it's getting towards the warmer months, there's no chance you're going to find that, and often it runs out. Or it might be something like an insecticide that I use. When spring gets here, there's no chance of finding that thing on the shelves, because everyone that has a garden that wants to spray will go to the same place as what I'm going to, and they'll strip the shelves. So I find that I have a list of things that I need to keep on my shelf, and when I look at them and I go, okay, yeah, it's there's probably half of what I need there. Next time I go, it's on my list. If I walk through and it's not there, it's like, there's no stress. You don't have it, that's cool. Next time I go back in a few weeks, a month later, have a look. There it is. I'll get it this time, and I'll add it to my pile of stuff that I've got at home. I never try and put myself under stress, but I want to make sure that I'm always sort of one step ahead of the curve, and understanding the growth habit, the timing of the growth habit, how the tree's going to grow, and therefore the fertilizing that you're going to need to do, and the timing of it and the frequency of it makes such a big difference. And that's a real you responsibility. You need to work that out and make sure that you're prepared to go. All right. So now, wrapping this part of the podcast up, I've come up with rule number 6. If you've been counting back home, so the last golden rule is, what's your ongoing development plan? And that's anyone that knows me knows that I love a good plan. I love having something to focus on. I love thinking about what the next step is going to be for any tree that's in my yard, because it's exciting. It gives me hope, gives me something to do. I never like looking at a tree going, yeah, that's it, it's done. Yeah, well, what do you do then? Like, you can admire it. It's a beautiful thing. It's a piece of art. But all right, even if it's something that is beautiful, what's the plan for it? All right, it's going to get too thick. All right, so how do I stop that? Am I going to be plucking needles? Am I going to be pruning partial defoliation of leaves? Like, what's the next step in this tree's evolution? It's never done. It's never finished. It's living. It's the way it goes. You know, things change over time with trees. You know, is it going to be in that pot forever? Do I want to consider another pot, maybe at next repot in 2 years' time? All right, so my plan is to go out there, start looking around all the different bonsai nurseries and online stores and acquire a pot that I think would look great, which is like this. So it's about having that development plan for your trees. And you don't have to have that all nutted out before you acquire the tree, but do the right thing by the tree that you've got, to give it the best chance to take that next step, to be the best it possibly can. You know, like, don't just acquire it, look at it and go, yeah, done, that's it. Sit there, needs a bit of water, a bit of food, yep, cool, no worries, done. It's like, how does it go from wherever it is now to another step, another level? Because they all can. There's very few trees that I look at and think that's absolutely perfect. You know, I always think, oh, what if, you know, this changed or that changed? Anyway, so they're the key things that I reckon you should consider. Most importantly, number one that came up on my list was sunlight, and positioning. Where are you going to keep this thing? How's it going to live? Is it going to be enough for the tree to survive? You know, they need exposure to the elements. They have to be in an environment where they're allowed to be a tree, because that's exactly what they are. Keeping them in a pot does not change the bare fundamentals of what that is. Watering, super important. It goes without saying. Are you going to be able to give the tree the water it needs when it needs it? If not, what are you going to do? What's your approach? What's your plan? Who's going to pick up that slack for you? Because sure as hell the tree can't go and get it for itself, and you need to plan for it prior to getting the tree. So those two they're super essentials before you even get the tree. Where's it going to live? How's it going to get exactly what it needs when it needs it? Last one, the next one. How many times a year is it going to need work? Are you able to give it what it needs when it needs it? Will you have the skill set, but also will you have the time? If it needs to be pruned, they don't. But if it needs to be pruned every 3 hours, you know, can you give it pruning every 3 hours? I'm being a bit facetious, but you know, repotting. When's it going to get done? How frequently is it going to get done? And are you equipped to do it? If not, how are you going to get that stuff done? Are you going to be able to get all the components that you need in time for being able to do it? Are you going to be able to be prepared? What's the growth habit of the tree? When's it going to be growing, which will lead you and help you with repotting timing? But growth habit, you know, how do I prune this thing? How do I know where to put my scissors or branch cutters and remove foliage? What's it going to grow like? What time of the year is it going to be growing? So therefore it leads into your fertilising. How are you going to give this tree the oomph that it needs? Because it's in a contained pot. It can't go and get what it needs. It's up to you. And the last one, as I said, the ongoing development plan. What's your plan to maximise the potential on this bonsai? And I can tell you that's one thing I want to wrap up the podcast with, is saying that I can always find potential in a tree. I get asked a lot that, you know, does this tree, will it be a beautiful bonsai? And I don't think I've ever said no. So there's always potential in the trees that you're looking at, but these golden rules, the fundamentals you need to nail down to allow that tree to thrive and continue to live a healthy, happy life. That's on you, and it's all stuff that needs to be considered prior, before you start acquiring the trees. Don't get them and then suddenly work out that, you know, these trees are getting weaker and weaker because they don't have what they need. Well, we're done, folks, for yet another week of the Bonsai Stuff podcast. I really do appreciate you listening in. I know I say it every week, but it means a hell of a lot. And it's fantastic that so many people in different parts of the world get so much out of this podcast. Hopefully this was one that is for everybody. I for myself, look around my own yard. Where have I got my trees kept? Are the trees thriving in that area? I know it's a nice bench and I know it looks great, but is that particular species, is that tree thriving? Is it doing excellent? Like, is it at the peak of its health? Because if it's not, then I need to look at changing things around. And we've all got absolute limited space. It's not like we've got fields and fields. Well, some of us may, but not everyone's got fields and fields of space. Sometimes it's a small balcony that you've got to weigh up. All right, how much sun am I getting? All right, so this part here gets 4 or 5 hours worth of sunlight per day. This part over here only gets 2. All right, so what trees are you going to shuffle around? Where are they going to grow best? Are you going to have to rotate them through there on a continual basis? Really, should you have as many trees as what you've got in the space that you've got available? And it's something that we talk about, or I talk about, reducing your collection when the work gets to be too much. It might be that your environment is the major factor when it comes to the type of trees and physically the number of trees that you can fit in there. And you might have a target species that is a strong sun demand tree, and if you don't have that, well, it's slowly going to deteriorate. It'll be great when you first get it. I looked at a black pine the other day that was due for repotting, and it was in terrible soil. It was extremely weakened. The thing was trying to push as many back buds as what it could throughout its structure, and it got long and leggy. And the owner had a chat. Okay, so this is a strategy going forward. This is the plan. It's got to be here. Where do you keep it now? And you find out that they thought, they were told, it's got to be in a sheltered environment, out of the weather, out of the sun. And this tree, they've had it for 4 or 5 years, and you can see that it's 4 or 5 years of decline that this tree had, getting weaker and weaker and weaker slowly, still surviving, still doing what it needed to do to keep the wheels turning to stay alive. It couldn't push out really strong growth, so therefore it was trying to pump out these little back buds, and the backwards would get going, and 1 or 2 would take off, and then the rest would start to die off because the tree just did not have enough strength, enough resources to keep this tree ticking over. So they might seem elemental, but I think it's something for all of us, and myself included. Your environment changes. Your trees growing over the fence from your neighbour's side may suddenly take what was a beautiful sunny spot, might suddenly become quite damp and wet and not get as much sunlight. So therefore the trees that you keep in that area need to rotate, need to go somewhere else. So you need to do something about having an environment that is conducive to your tree still kicking goals, still getting stronger and stronger. So anyway, hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And as always, I'm going to be back here next week filling your ears with more bonsai stuff. So thanks for listening. Come back. I'll catch up with you next time. Enjoy this week with your trees. If you sort of haven't started repotting, then it's I'd reckon come the next month you'll be neck deep in it. Hopefully you're sort of where I am, where I look out my window. I get into my workshop and it's just repotted trees everywhere. So for me the deciduous repotting is getting closer to being done. Still not finished, but getting closer, and then I can move into my conifers and pines and start working my way through those. So only another month to go, thank God. Say my hands as they're scarred and they're tingly and they're quite numb at night. Anyway, give your trees a cuddle, and as always, until next time, happy bonsai.